Good afternoon. Some people call this the hump day, getting over the hump. It's a Wednesday afternoon. John Hughes, the big man, Yogi, is drinking from his Celtic mug. It's the Bumblebee. We've got Patrick McGilp coming back into the fray after a couple of weeks on international duty. And on constant international duty, you've got Kevin McCluskey dialing in from Budapest. Guys, what a lineup and what a week. I'm going to start with you, Paddy. You've been off for a couple of weeks, mate. How do you think the preparations are going for the big one on Sunday?
It's gone as well as it could do. You know, a 3-0 win, comfortable. I think, as John Kennedy said, didn't even have a corner. Didn't really threaten at all. I mean, a poor side, but a good performance and a good 3 points. Get the goals. Kuhn, I think the last time I was on, we were all slating Kuhn, and now he's looking like one of our better players. You know,
I don't know what you mean, Patrick. I don't know what you mean. That can't possibly have happened.
If you're off for a fortnight, you know, a player can go from 0 to hero in a fortnight, can't he?
It all changes. Obviously, I think Taylor was the only Celtic player involved in those Scotland games. McGregor obviously out. So international break was no problems there. Disappointed not to see McGregor yesterday, but obviously you can't rush these things, and it is a plastic pitch, and we obviously won comfortably without him, so it'll be interesting to see if he's involved at the weekend. But I think we're in good form. You know, when you look at the run of results, we've got 6 wins out of 7, and that one loss at Tynecastle was through some dodgy refereeing decisions, in my opinion. So
are you allowed to say that? Are you allowed to say that, Patrick? Will you be dragged up in front of the SFA beaks? Dearie me, that's scandalous, mate.
No, I think the preparation's gone very well, and you know, I'm quietly confident. I mean, I'll always take a draw at Ibrox, and you know, I'd take it this weekend as well. But we're in a good place. I'm glad to see Hatate back, and if all the main guys can stay on form and stay fit, then I think we'll go into this very, very healthy.
Yep, you brought up Callum McGregor. Like yourself, I was looking at the images yesterday to see if he was training. John Kennedy being asked about him. I was being told also that, you know, McGregor is itching to play, but it's all going to come down to the medical advice and the guidance. I'm going to ask Kevin McCluskey the midfield without him. I'm going to ask John Hughes the midfield with him. Who knows until the starting 11 is announced which one we're going to get. Kev, if we don't have Callum McGregor, what is the midfield three in your view?
I'm probably going to have quite a controversial view on that one, in a sense, because I'm going to go with Iwata, Paulo Bernardo and Matt O'Reilly as my midfield three if Callum can't make it. Just think Iwata gives us that wee bit defensive solidity at the base of the three. Bernardo's been that the player that's just come in for those big games. He's got full of energy, blocks the passing lanes. That's why we had him in Europe. He was like the European expert. We bring him in for those games. He scored against them the last time in. He scored at the weekend, so he's on a bit of a high. Mm-hmm. So I'd throw him in for that reason. And then it's the toss-up between O'Reilly and Hatate, but I just kind of feel game's set up for O'Reilly to have one of his masterclasses in the midfield again, and who better to have coming off the bench if you need that wee bit of creativity than Rio Hatate. So I think that's the one for me that gives us kind of covers all the bases.
The thing is with that, Kev, for anyone who doesn't normally tune into the match days, this guy here is called Kevin McCluskey. He lives in Budapest. He gives us Hungarian scouting reports that Celtic will never read. And he's off today, so he's joining us on a Wednesday, which is very much welcome, Kevin. And I think that when you look at that midfield, John, although it's not the midfield I would choose, you know, if I saw that on the start 11 from Brendan Rodgers, it would not surprise me. But what would you do if McGregor is fit? What's your midfield three?
I've been back and forth on this, and it's very, very difficult because one of them, are we going to be ruled by fear, essentially? So you have a midfield to win the game, and you have a midfield to try not to lose the game.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, in my opinion, you try not to lose the game, you'll end up losing. Now, you know, the last game we played them, I was fortunate enough to be there, and we absolutely obliterated them in the midfield. That's where we won that game, hands down. They couldn't touch us in the midfield. We were so dominant. Bernardo was a massive part of that. Bernardo at the weekend there, for instance, in his goal, which was the only decent goal, let's be honest, you know, you had Hattate's ricochet, you had Matt O'Reilly's tap in, and Bernardo scored a peach, and he did that with a brilliant win in the midfield. He ran it beautifully, and this is the shocking thing that has me thinking about him. He made a forward pass to Matt O'Reilly. Now, admittedly, he was falling over at the time, so it was probably accidental. But he made a forward pass to Matt O'Reilly, took the return, and they put it in the net, and it was a beautiful goal. And that's the thing about Bernardo. The thing that's so frustrating about him is he just he's not brave enough on the ball. He doesn't make enough forward passes, but he has everything else. He's got a great engine. He puts himself in dangerous positions. He's got a great shot on him. He scored against them the last time. He does incredible off the ball work, and he's just tremendous like that. So it's a very strong argument for him. Now, the thing about Hatate is he can win you the game and lose you the game. So if he comes on and he's Pete Hatate and he's spraying the ball around and he keeps us going forward and everything's magnificent, but if he loses the ball in transition, his first touch of the ball, and suddenly I have it in my notes, I think it was his first touch of the ball, he lost the ball, and they immediately broke onto Liam Scales, who had to defend it quite well. So he brings that danger. And it's always been with Hatate, when he's bringing the worldies, the danger is worth it. Is he quite bringing the worldies at this point? Can we take that sort of risk in this game? When you know the one thing Bernardo won't do is lose you the game. He certainly won't do that. Now, there's no guarantee he'll win you, but he won't lose you. So it's incredibly difficult. And then, if Calmack's back, then I would play Calmack because he shows up for these games. Mm-hmm. He's unbelievably energised and motivated by these. He's always at the heart of everything in these games. So I would play him without question if he's back. If he's not, fair enough, Iwata. But again, just back from injury. Can we have two players in the midfield who are just back from injury? Hatate's got 60 minutes. Callum's got nothing.
Good point.
Can we start with that midfield? How big a risk is that? With Iwata, again, he adds that defensive solidity, but he's also then effectively, you're inviting people onto you. And I think we're going to win this pushing forward. I think we're going to win this not by being conservative, by getting tore into them, because I still think defensively, we are weak and we have problems in a number of areas. But, I think we will win on the front foot, and ideally we need to win. You could argue, as Patrick says, we don't lose. Not losing is just as important. But I think we need to win this game. I would want to have this in our hands again. So, again, that's a long way around saying I still haven't made my mind up. But I think if all being well, I think it would be Calmack, O'Reilly and Hatate for me to start. And if it's not working out, Hatate, if he's losing the ball in transition, just get him off and get Bernardo on. But I think we need to be brave.
I think that's our strongest. When everybody's fit, for me, that's our strongest midfield, John. But I like your point that, you can start defensively or start attacking minded. And that for me, that all starts in Celtic's midfield. How we line up in the midfield will show how we're going to play the first 60 to 65. If you've got someone like Bernardo or Iwata on the bench, they're going to come on to shore it up in the last half hour of the game. I think that is key. And when we see the starting 11, we'll know what Brendan Rodgers' intentions are. Now, yeah, we will be talking about team selections, the usual stuff pre-match, leading into any game, never mind the biggest game of the season. But I was mentioning yesterday, the day before, and on the blog, Acsom now, we've had a blog for a while, but we've now got a consistent blog with quite a lot of content going on it. And we were talking around where else in the world is the announcement of officials awaited with such trepidation than it is in Scotland. And that is so true. I mean, I don't know, because I've only ever really experienced Scottish football. But seriously, do you think that somewhere in Belgium they're all sitting there on a Tuesday wondering who's going to be making up the referee's team at the weekend? I don't think so. I think it's unique to Scottish football. Facebook user, it's not coming up with your avatar, but I'm bringing you up because we've got to get this right. This is a Masters of the Universe thing here, and we need to be detailed. It's not Castle Grayskull, it's Snake Mountain. Ibrox is Snake Mountain. Snake Mountain was Skeletors, the bad guys. All right, sorry, it's just, we've got to get this right. Willie Colo, I've got to say this is a really good point from Willie Boy. Great picture of Dixie Deans. They don't make footballers like they used to, John Hughes. Look at that man there, about 1.5 stone overweight, scored goals, done wee roly-polies. What a player. What a player Dixie was.
Yeah, you're asking the wrong man to comment about that.
I met Dixie once in one of the lounges, and I was with a pal of mine who is an actor, and he asked him about the Bob Marley story. The Bob Marley being a Celtic fan story that originated from Dixie Deans, of course, when he played his football in Australia. He went to a Bob Marley and the Wailers gig, managed to get himself backstage, and Bob Marley was all over him like a rash, going on about how much he loved Celtic and the Lisbon Lions, and how he used to get the games sent over on the old VHS tapes and all the rest of it. So Dixie Dean spoke about it in his autobiography, and a few of the newspapers serialised that Bob Marley's a Tim. And then I was watching, not the one that's just came out, I was watching a documentary a few years ago, and this picture popped up for like a second on the screen, and it was Bob Marley with his wife Rita, and then he had one of his sons, Rohan, who went on to be I think, American footballer, on his shoulder, and he's wearing the hoops. So I snapped it and put it out on Twitter. Everybody's gone, you made that up. That's AI generated. And who comes on to clarify that it was Celtic jersey, and him and his dad used to love Celtic? Rohan Marley. Rohan Marley came on to the beauty of Twitter, and it shut everybody down. Anyway, we'll get to your point now, Willie. Sorry, I digress. Can we all imagine the uproar if Neil Lennon had said what McCoy said yesterday? Honestly, can you just imagine? This is the beauty, Paddy. I remember when we started on A Celtic State of Mind, people said to me, it might be all right during the lockdown when nobody's got anything to do, but you can't speak about Celtic for an hour. I can guarantee you every single day there is a 1 hour conversation about Celtic. And something today that wasn't discussed yesterday were these comments from Cheeky Chappie, Ali McCoist, the housewife's favourite. What did you make of that, Paddy?
Yeah, it's just, I mean, it came as a surprise to some people, but I mean, I don't think any of us will be surprised. I mean, he is portrayed as a sort of media darling, or he's the best commentator in Britain, and isn't he so funny and cheeky? I've never taken a liking to him at all. Obviously, I'm a Celtic fan, so it's going to be a lot harder, but he just seems a bit sneaky to me and always has done. And these comments show that. I mean, he's just admitted that he's going to be full of hatred and bigotry at the weekend, which some people might come to expect from, old firm fans, as they're tagged by fans of other teams in Scotland. But it's just such a spectacular own goal from him, from a guy who's quite prominent in sort of mainstream sports media, to just admit that you're going to spout all this hate and nonsense and be in breach of this new law. I mean, I'm not going to claim I've read this law. I don't know, the specifics about it, but he's obviously backtracked by saying that he's not going to be at the game anymore. It's something, I'm not totally surprised by these sort of stupid comments, but I think it's an eye opener for a lot of people that he's not some, cuddly Teddy who used to play football. He's actually, get some serious flaws, and he's not the nice guy everyone thinks he is, in my opinion.
Yeah, well, I think history proves that. Obviously, as I said there, Twitter's great for some aspects of, like, Rohan Marley just coming into your argument to prove you right. That was probably the high point of my Twitter career. But obviously, there's a lot of toxicity in there as well. But what's great is when someone utters some such drivel, you've always got some Celtic fan out there who can pull out an old article from 1987 or something like that, which shows that McCoist was involved in a stramash in a street outside a kebab shop where people were throwing around the bigoted phrases, etc. So that's interesting, because it has been adopted as some kind of darling, Kev. We Ali on Question of Sport, with all the kind of pub patter that nobody else would laugh at, even if he was in a pub. And then the true colour, the mask slips. I mean, what he's saying there is this law's nonsense, because we should be allowed to engage in such vile chants that absolutely we hear every single second week at Ibrox, and it's never really challenged. For me, I think straight away the first thing that comes to my mind is the fracas on a touchline with Neil Lennon. I don't know, Lenny seemed to be getting a lot more flack than we Super Ali after that, because Lenny is basically, as Willie Colley said there, he's a guy that would be up for the high jump if he said something like this. What did you make of this? It's very irresponsible for someone with such a high profile and on such a popular platform to come away with that kind of nonsense, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. I think Patrick's called it spot on. Like, it's a spectacular own goal. We've got a view of Ali McCoist which will be different from the vast majority of the population probably that listens to him, because we're Celtic fans. We grew up with him scoring goals against us pretty much every time he played against us, so there's a natural dislike of him that way anyway. But there's something about the personality of the guy that never quite sat well with me either. So I kind of echo a lot of what Patrick said there. So to hear him come out with that doesn't really surprise me. The incident that you've referenced there with Neil Lennon, again, Lennon's always portrayed as the aggressor and the bad guy in these situations because he was the hound dog in the pitch and he would go about snapping at players' ankles, trying to win the ball back. And that was his persona on the park. I actually think Lennon handles himself fairly well off the pitch, and he knows not to say anything as stupid as that in public. Maybe he has some feelings personally, but he'll not express it publicly. So for Ali McCoist to come out and say that, I think it's just blown his whole personality out in the open. People will now see him for a little bit more of what he is. And basically what he's trying to say is, it's all right to go to the football and be this 90-minute bigot and shout and scream the abuse, whatever you want. But we all know that there's no such thing as a 90-minute bigot. That's your place where you go and do it because you think it's safe to do it, but it's not. If that's your opinion for that 90 minutes, it's your opinion in your life in general. So he's now going to go home, probably watch a game in his house and be the bigot there. It's not going to change that. It's not going to change who he is. So yeah, spectacular own goal from him. I'll be interested to see what the fallout is from it, if there is any, if any of the TV stations decide to take him off commentary duty because of this. Because really, can you afford that reputational damage of having somebody that is now blatantly, publicly outed themselves as a bigot on your channels? I'll wait and see, but I don't know. I don't really expect to see any action, but we'll wait and see.
Yeah, you're right. And yesterday, John, we spoke about the contempt shown towards Celtic by the SFA. There's a level of contempt now, you could say, from the media, because Ali McCoist, since going on gardening leave, has been working in the media on prominent channels within the media landscape as well. So this contempt not only is being shown by the SFA with regards to their selection process for the referees at Livingston and for the forthcoming game against Rangers, we're also hearing it and feeling it from the media as well, John. It's like, I'm not being funny, but psychologically, this actually might work in our favour, because the backs are now to the wall. You're all against us. And that, I sometimes think that's when Brendan Rodgers is at his best.
Well, in terms of McCoist's contribution, it's exactly what you'd expect from the likes of McCoist, who him and your other man, who is it that's on with Sutton?
Chris Boyd.
Chris Boyd, yeah, I can't even remember his name. The two of them, between them, wouldn't have the intellectual capacity of a single-celled amoeba. So, for them, what he says is of no relevance other than the fact that it really demonstrates, when Kev was speaking there, I had just written down all those things Kev said, the 90-minute bigot thing and how comfortable they are in their own bigotry. Because he didn't think, it didn't occur to him for a second that right-thinking people would say, excuse me, you're going to do what? Mm-hmm. You're going to a game with the full intention of being a bigot. That's what you're saying. So you're so comfortable with that in your Rangers bubble that you're quite happy that to say it in public without having thought it through. That normal people do not behave like that. That's the whole point. I don't know if you've noticed, Ali, but there's been a few complaints. Not that many, once every single game. But that level of bigotry and hatred and sectarianism and anti-Irish racism and all of those things. No, I'm sorry. That's not acceptable. And it's not all right to go and do that at the football. And as Kev says, that's not where it ends. Absolutely not where it ends. They do it when they're comfortable, right? Or they do it when they're drunk, or they do it, where they feel safe. And it's absolutely typical of the man who ruined Question of Sport for me, a show that I used to like. But he's been a rat since he was a player as well. I remember him used to, go up behind guys and pat them in the back of the neck. But while he was patting them in the neck, which looked like a conciliatory gesture, he'd be nipping them. And so it was that kind of wee horrible yeah. He's like a wee Jack Russell, wee annoying Jack Russell. He just keeps barking and yapping and hoping someone pays him some attention. So he's a non-entity, McCoist, and he embarrassed himself as a manager, when it really mattered, embarrassed himself, and obviously as well, I don't understand why Rangers fans still like him. He basically robbed the new club, didn't he? What salary was he on?
900 grand, 900 grand a year.
Yeah. Their club, they didn't have a pot to do the proverbial in. He's on 900 grand a year, and division, whatever it was, the division above the one they should have been in anyway, after liquidation. So it was just, he's just a non-entity. In terms of the more important things, the appointment of Beaton, to me, is a declaration of war.
Do you want to talk about
that? That is.
There's a few people running a book on the rant. When's the rant coming? Now, who had 21 minutes? Because it's coming.
It's arrived. Well, that's the other thing as well. It's like a totalitarian state. It doesn't matter what the truth is. It doesn't matter how bad something is. It doesn't matter how corrupt something is. It doesn't matter how awful something is. You can't criticise the party. So it doesn't matter what actually happened. All that matters is the criticism will be punished. So, that in itself is deeply, deeply wrong and deeply flawed. You can't have people giving referees abuse, but you should be able to ask about, what referees' decisions are. But that really is, to me, that is so blatant from Crawford Allen, it's just, I can't even say that boy's name without thinking about that Billy Connolly joke about all the posh guys. Crawford is Hunter coming, Farquhar coming. So, but honestly, the guy has, and clearly this was the danger in letting him ride things out to the end of the season. He has nothing to lose here, and he has demonstrated that by the full middle finger to Celtic. By choosing a guy who we literally just a couple of weeks ago, the manager has criticised as being incompetent, and putting him in charge. And we all know the story. Willie Collum, what was it? He didn't referee them again for another 4 months or something like that.
Yeah.
Another 7 odd games. And we're getting them straight away. And the VAR team as well, the token normal ref is Collum as fourth official, basically doing nothing. But the people with the power to actually do anything on and off the pitch have been handpicked to be guys at the forefront of the bias. And I'm not going to say incompetence, because quite frankly, I believe that Alan Morrison back in December. And again, this highlights how important Acsom is, because you put that episode out with Alan, and this thing has taken off, the pattern of assistance. But that was December when we had that conversation with Alan, and I was talking about pattern of assistance because I was just repeating what he was saying. But it was on Graham Spears' podcast and it didn't get the traction. So it's taken off since it was on Acsom. And it is undeniable fact. No matter how, I've seen guys try to fact check him very unsuccessfully. It's an undeniable fact. And the most undeniable fact is incompetence does not have a pattern, right? So that's the most important thing. We cannot say it's just because they're bad referees, because it can't all be bad referees and come up with a pattern which is so in favour of one club. It's
Yes.
just not possible. So you cannot look at that and then just say, oh, they're bad, we need better trained referees, we need full-time referees and all of that stuff is true. But what we also need is unbiased referees. And, you know, the absolute arrogance, the effrontery of your man Allen in the SFA to a point beaten for this game, the biggest game probably in about 10 years, specifically for this game, right, is shameful. Absolutely shameful. Never seen anything like it in my life. You know, well, that's not true. I wish that was true. But, you know, I mean, it's absolutely, I mean, I just can't go over it. I can't go over that's what they've done and we're expected to suck it up, you know. And if Dermot Desmond, you know, is not sitting there, and I said it last night and deleted the tweet actually because I was a bit rude about it, but, you know, if Dermot Desmond isn't raging right now, absolutely raging, then there is something far wrong. If we're not drawing up plans to have a root and branch reorganisation of the SFA, then there is something far wrong. This is unacceptable, entirely unacceptable. And again, this is going to be a tight game. It is going to be a tight game, no matter what anyone says. You know, it's been a good while since we went to their midden and scalped them. So, you know, it's going to be a relatively tight game. And, you know, something like a red card or even a set piece to give Tavernier a chance in the edge of the box, you know, all of these things which are going to be very difficult to prove, but it's going to be clear to us and everyone else is just going to say, don't worry about it. And as for, we need to just go there and beat them and worry about our own performance, all of that is true. All of it's true. But in a tight game, these things matter enormously. And you keep going back, Paul John, to what Jock Stein said about, you know, if you're good enough, the referee doesn't matter. That wasn't true then. That was something you say to the players to motivate the players, because you can't have the players going out with a defeatist mindset. So you say that to the players, but it wasn't true then, and it's not true now. You know, that was just a bit of motivation. So I know I can't begin to tell you how absolutely enraged that decision made me of the officials. Absolutely shocking.
Yeah, and there's a few points there, John, I want to run with, because the first one is, you think of figureheads at Celtic, and currently you think of two people. You think of Dermot Desmond and Peter Lawwell. And just the other week there, we had that phenomenal graphic from a friend of ours, Barry McCluskey, where it was Dermot Desmond, and he had his flamethrower in hand, and he was ready for the SFA. And the point I was making yesterday on the blog, go and have a wee look at that, is the fact that we have had figureheads in the past who have gone toe-to-toe. There is a culture. This is a problem here. There is a culture, and it's going back to something that John said there. You could tear it up and replace all the different people bit by bit, but if the culture remains, the problem remains. And the culture has been that Celtic have been treated with contempt for a long, long time. I can take it back to the 50s. Some of the older heads might be able to take it further back than that. And it went right back. The examples I gave was Sir Robert Kelly up against SFA over the flag furore. And then in the 70s, Desmond White had the same issue. It's all on the blog. And then in the 90s, every 20 years, Fergus McCann had these issues with the SFA, not only with not being allowed to fly a flag at Hampden because it was regarded as a foreign emblem, but also the George Cadet affair, which rumbled on until 1999. It had to go through an independent inquiry after two internal inquiries that the SFA deemed that Jim Farley had done nothing wrong with the registration of George Cadet. Fergus McCann proved that he had. He lost his job. This is an ingrained culture within the SFA, and when they have an opportunity, they, as John said, will give us it tight, and they've done it. They've done it with, you know, the appointment of John Beaton. Patrick, my issue and what I was covering in that particular piece was the fact in the past we could rely on the figurehead. Robert Kelly, divided opinion, by the way. However, he stood up for things that he believed in, which was why he refused to play a particular European game, because of the political landscape of that time. Brilliant to go back and read the way that man approached that situation. And then we had Desmond White. A lot of people thought that all he ever did was count the crowds. He had his own turnstile, apparently. But he took on the SFA. Fergus McCann took on the SFA. Do we have a figurehead strong enough, Patrick McGill, who is prepared to do that?
We do, but it's a bit of a lottery as to whether he's first or not. I mean, Desmond is when he gets involved, he usually gets his way, and there's nothing stopping him. But it's a total coin toss as to whether or not he's involved at the time or not. I mean, he obviously stood up and stood in with the Brendan Rodgers hearing, got the top football lawyer in the UK, possibly in Europe, to come in and represent us. And it kind of worked. I mean, he's in the dugout for Ibrox, and there was no points dropped at the weekend, so that sort of worked. So we do have the figurehead. It's just whether or not he's interested or not. And I think it'd be interesting to see a root and branch sort of assessment or even upheaval of the governing body, because one of the things that Alan pointed out in that sort of special podcast that was released last week was they mark their own homework. These guys, they're responsible for recruitment, training, allocation, marking. I mean, as you're just saying there, they cleared Jim Farry twice before an independent investigation found him guilty. So it shows how flawed that. I mean, obviously that was 25 years ago, but it shows that the system is flawed. You can't have people marking your own homework. So I think we obviously feel victim to, call it incompetence, call it partner of assistance. We're certainly victim to wrongful decisions on a fairly regular basis. Rangers fans also claim that they are victims of wrong decisions, whether that's true or not. They certainly feel that way. I'm sure other teams feel as if they are victim to wrongful decisions. So I think if you got the 12 clubs together and said we're off, we're forming our own governing body, I think you could see. I don't know if the appetite's there from the people who run these 12 clubs, but I think there has to be a change, because there is a constant. I mean, it's almost every week you're talking about referees, you're talking about VAR. Turnbull, I think it was Turnbull Hutton. Was it Dundee United or Wraith Rovers was threatening
Wraith
to walk
Rovers.
away
Yeah.
back in 2012. I think there needs to be some sort of moment like that, because we can run our own affairs. I mean, the guys running Celtic, at least, and probably a few other clubs, are much more competent and much more savvy than the guys running the SFA. So I think if the 12 clubs got together and formed a new football association, I think that might be the way forward, because, as Alan said, you can't have these guys marking their own homework and giving themselves a pat in the back while, pretty much all 12 clubs are feeling aggrieved at decision making on a weekly basis.
No, you're spot on. I find it bizarre that Rangers fans feel aggrieved, but listen, I don't tune into their podcast and all the rest of it like they do with theirs, so I'm not quite sure what the rationale is. A couple of things. First of all, you mentioned Question Sport, John Hughes. I'm more of an Emlyn Hughes, Bill Beaumont kind of era. That was when it hit its peak. I know that Willie Carson was one of the captains prior to that, but Bill Beaumont, Emlyn Hughes, tuned in every single week. Used to love that. And also, there's the 25 years, Kevin. Patrick McGill was just blowing my mind. That was 25 years ago, 1999. Deary me, mate, don't do that to me.
I would just like to point out I wasn't born then. Just like to point that out.
Patrick, get off.
Yeah, I know. You and Declan, pesky Declan. I tell you, there was a discussion the other day there, because when we were talking about cult heroes in respect to Paddy McCourt and all these guys, Rudy Vata, Anton Rogan, Jim Orr came up with a new one, the cult villain. Bolly Bolingoli is a cult villain, and I'm thinking, all right, that's a new category. And then obviously there was that discussion that we had, the Acsom team had, around who are the villains, who are the ex-Celts you love to hate. And I threw in Mark Viduka in there, because I felt that Mark Viduka, right, when he came to the club, actually, when you look back in the way that he was treated by them, when he went AWOL, because he was suffering mental stress and anxiety and everything else, and he goes back to Australia, and he was lambasted for that in the press. He eventually comes back, he spits on a Dunfermline player, he takes his boots off in the Inverness-Cali game, refuses to go out for the second half. And that game, right, not only does it remind me of Viduka doing that, it reminds me of the fact that Declan McConville was born that night, and it makes me feel particularly old. And then the final nail in his coffin for me, Viduka that is, no Declan, was he refused to come and do the pre-season training with Martin O'Neill. Kev, he just refused to come. And O'Neill's like expecting him to be there on day one at training. He phones him up. Where are you, mate? I'm in Australia. I'm not coming to training. So Mark Viduka is a cult villain. But let's get back to the point. John Beaton is the referee at the weekend, Kev. And we have heard all this discussion. And this is what Brendan Rodgers will be saying to these guys. I think he'll be fueling their fire. You're good enough. But let's make sure it doesn't come down to a decision from the ref. But as John says, these games have been very, very tight when it matters in recent years, haven't they?
Yeah, they have. I think Beaton's got the potential to be a different kind of villain, beginning with C on Sunday if it doesn't go to plan. But yeah, these games have been super tight over. Cheers, John. These games have been super tight over the last few years. I think the last 10 games, I've actually got a blog that should be going up on the website later on this afternoon if Paul does it for me, which mentions this fact here. Over the last 10 games, I think only 2 Glasgow derbies have been decided by more than 1 goal. So they're really, really tight games. It comes down to the fine margins. It's a moment of magic. It's a defensive mistake, or it could likely happen on Sunday. It's refereeing influence that could decide the outcome of this game. And yeah, I mean, with Beaton being the man in charge, you just wouldn't put it past them, you know. And it's what the things that Kev Graham has said before when he spoke about Beaton for the Hearts game. It's the unconscious bias that's there, which is why you just can't have him in this game. You know, you've got to remove that element. I mean, I'm not sure who you replace him with, because to be fair, most referees will have the same unconscious bias that he does. But he's got very recent history of having shown it in a game and the detriment that it can have on Celtic in a game and Celtic in a title race. We can't afford to have that. Like John said as well, the old one of you tell the players before a game that it doesn't matter what the referee does, you just go out and play your performance and you'll win the game, let it take care of itself. It just doesn't work that way, because it is a decision that can change the game. And John also said it as well. It doesn't have to be a penalty. It doesn't have to be a red card. It's a free kick that's awarded in a dangerous position where Tavernier can hurt you. It's giving a yellow card to a centre-back after 2 minutes of the game, and then he can't touch a player for the rest of the match. It's all these little things. And like I say, just having Beaton that figure there, if he books Scales or Carter Vickers in the first 2 minutes, whether it's a yellow card or not, we're going to feel it's not. We're going to feel victimised because of that. And it just creates an unnecessary tension in a game that's already full of it. So, yeah, it's going to be a tough match. It's going to be really, really tight. But we've got the players, I think, that can do it. We spoke about the midfield before. If we've got Callum McGregor back, he's captain fantastic in these games. We've seen him so many times just gather the ball and drive us forward, be the cool head in midfield. Bernardo's got a goal in him against that lot. He's done it before. Kyogo has scored a goal every 76 minutes. He's been on the park against them over his last 6 appearances. We've got a real threat. Yes. That's also in the blog. I shouldn't be telling people this, otherwise they'll not read it now. But we've got the threats ourselves. You know, if we do play a game, we have a really good chance of winning it, but we have to mitigate any opportunity of giving Beaton a chance to punish us, because, like you said, that unconscious bias will come to the fore. There will be decisions that go against us, and we just have to limit them throughout the 90 minutes.
Nah, you're absolutely right. I can't wait to read this blog now. Well promoted. Robert O'Neill.
I've just basically read it out to you, so there's no point now.
Hi, Acsom team. Let's manage the game. We only need a draw and batter them rather at Paradise in the last derby. We'll come back to that, because a draw isn't a horrendous result. Johnny Ryan, Hoopy Wednesday, all good to see you, Johnny, on the YouTube, and Plunge McNugget. Not quite sure where you've got that name from, Plunge, but please do let us know. Afternoon to you as well. Ryan McGinley, great to see you as well. Afternoon, guys. What an avatar that is. Oh, the moody Ryan standing there for his portrait.
That's a LinkedIn profile picture if I've ever seen one.
We should get them done. We should get them done for Acsom as well.
The headshot, professional headshots.
The moody look. We'll get you wearing John will have his Acsom mug. We'll use it for merchandise promo. Why not? Great to see you, Ryan. Hope you're well. Magnet 67. Agree with Patrick. I'm excited to see how Kuhn does at Snake Mountain. See, you got it right. It's Snake Mountain, mate. He-Man and the Masters of the Universe. Let's talk about the wings then, because that's been a big issue this season, throughout the season. The inconsistency of the wingers, John. We've had Luis Palma, coming in as a new player, scoring a lot of goals, creating a lot of goals, out of favour at times, now currently injured. We've had the departure of Lila Bada that filled so many column inches throughout the season. Maeda has been Maeda, the cult hero. The only thing that's changed this season with Maeda has been his hair. Everything else you would expect from him. On the right-hand side, you've had Kuhn, you've had Yang. Forrest has made some cameos. Rocco Vata's been on the fringes. But that game at Tynecastle that's come under focus in recent weeks really was a turning point for the careers of both Yang and Kuhn this season, because we're going into this Rangers game, and I don't know about you guys, but for me, Kuhn's a starter. It's a no-brainer. He's shown enough, I think, in the last 2 or 3 games that he gets that starting berth. John, what's your take on that?
Well, yeah, I mean, I very unwisely ignored my own experience and my own rules, which are, I even said it at the time, I don't judge players early because I'm not a good enough judge of a player to judge them early. And I'm not a football coach, so I always give people the benefit of the doubt. Did not do that with Kuhn because he looked as if he'd never kicked a ball before for some of his first experiences, and I just couldn't see anything that was in there that looked as if he was remotely a player. And then, of course, you're finding out that apparently getting your wisdom teeth out, it really takes quite a while to recover from. Now, I don't know. I've never had that done. I still have my wisdom fully intact, apart from in this occasion. So, no, it was. I gave the boy a bit of a doing, and obviously he's come back to rub that one right in my face, which I'm delighted about because wow, did we need some good wingers. We were struggling so badly. The wing play was so poor. And then we had Yang starting to come into a game. And now the problem we have now is it's completely lopsided. So we have 3 guys there, Kuhn, Yang and Forrest, who all seem to be on a game, but they're all on the right-hand side. And we really, really need a better option on the left. Because Maeda, he gives you so much, but he also is so frustrating. But in these games, against them, for instance, they don't like playing against him at all. So, he's going to be starting and hopefully just terrorises them the same way they normally do. But we're very fortunate at the moment, and that's one of the reasons I think most people are confident. I think they've got some problems at left back as well, haven't they? I think it's Barisic, or you don't even know if Barisic is going to make it. So that's good for Kuhn because he has really come onto a game and looks like the player that we paid for. As opposed to his brother that we signed by accident. So he's doing really well, and Yang's doing really well, and both of those could be lethal for us in this game. So yeah, we don't have. That's one of the reasons why we can be confident going into this. So it's one of the things I'm looking forward to seeing, and that's one of the reasons why I say we're going to win this on the front foot. I don't think it benefits us by trying to hold back and trying to play for a draw. I don't think we'd ever do that anyway, but that's one sure way of, making sure you don't get the result you want. But yeah, and Kyogo's looking good again. But the first half there, we had so many chances against Livingston, and it was such a frustrating half, and we were so inaccurate. It was incredibly frustrating. And we just couldn't get the ball in the net. We're not going to get that many chances, at the weekend. So we need to be much, much more accurate and precise in final ball, final choice of ball, and finishing.
We just don't have the time, John, to settle into the game. Kevin McCluskey and I have been sitting there at half-time quite a lot this season, and it's almost as if we're going through the gears, Kev. And you're sitting there at half-time going, right, I'm not too excited about the fact that we're nothing each at the moment, because you can see that we're dominating possession, we're controlling the game, the goals will come. And it was the same at Livingston there. You had that penalty shout albeit I don't think it knocked us off our stride in any way, shape, or form. And by the way, Kuhn was massive to the lead up to that, where Hugo was taken out. But how often have we had that discussion at half time, Kev, where we've just not gone out there straight off the bat and really had that intensity early on?
Aye, it's often felt like Groundhog Day at half time. We could just, I've joked to you before we've gone on air a few times, just put on the halftime show from last week because it's the same discussion, just change the team name. I think Livingston, though, the weekend was different because although we hadn't scored, it felt like it was never in doubt. So in other games, you're a wee bit worried we've been a bit too passive. On the weekend, and I just thought we were always in control. We dominated possession. We were probing and trying to get through the defence. It just wasn't coming off, and you felt as soon as it does the first time, then we'd go on and win the game pretty comfortably. And that's how it proved to be. But there's too many games this season where we have been a bit, like you say, passive in the first half. We haven't come out and had a go. And we'll need to do that at the weekend because I've been sitting before today thinking kind of similar to Patrick at the start. I'd take a draw at the weekend because I think that sets us up. It keeps it in our hands for the rest of the season still. But the more I listen to John, the more I'm beginning to have my mind changed on that one. Obviously, I want us to win either way, but you're convincing me, John. We need to be a bit more aggressive.
The thing about it, Kev, is you and Patrick are both young and fit. I have high blood pressure. I honestly don't think I can wait to Celtic Park to settle it. I just don't think I can do it. I am so anxious for this game.
Yeah.
Yes. I can quite agree with that because I might be younger, but the old heart's still going at 100 miles an hour. Just thinking about that game coming up.
You can't call yourself young when you're on a show with Paddy McGill. Come on, Kev, you're pushing it there, mate. Yeah.
I'm young in comparison to John, though.
Oh, wait a minute.
No bother. Have a dig at John. Just because you're in Budapest, by the way. You wouldn't do that if you were in the same room. That's for sure.
Picking on the old
man.
Age is one of the things that's protected under this new hate crime stuff, so you just watch yourself there.
Talking to the hate crime, McCoy's pundit career should be over after his comments, John. According to STV this morning, he said he will not be at the game after all. Prior commitments.
Yeah.
John's right. I mean, there are certain people who are dealt with gusto, I think would be the best way to describe it, whereby, there's no wiggle room when it comes to comments like this. And, comments have ended the punditry careers of many, many pundits over the years. So it'll be interesting to see where wee cheeky Ali ends up. Joseph McGonigal, the dream team. Can't wait to hear John. You've still got another 30 minutes of John to come back and rattle Kevin McCluskey. Respond to McCluskey's jibes. Robert Arbuckle, can't wait for John's rant about beating. What minute was it on, John? 27?
21 through to 29.
Just a short rant. And Kevin Morton, hail from a wet, rainy Darlington. Hopefully you're all right. Patrick Harold, also afternoon comrades. Now, that picture, isn't that from the Leeds United game given away by the socks? We had to wear Leeds United's away socks in that game, didn't we, down in Elland Road, John? Am I right?
I think you might be right. Yeah.
It looks as though it is. So very unusually, the referee obviously said to Jockstein before the game, you can't wear the white socks because there's going to be a clash of colours. And he was given the change socks for Leeds United. One of their kits had socks that were blue, and one of them had socks that were orange. So a very good choice for Jockstein. But what he did do is he went for the orange ones and said, they will glow like gold under the floodlights. Jockstein just had a way with words, didn't he? Absolutely brilliant. Love that. Afternoon to you as well, Stuart Ramsey. Afternoon, Acsom, and all my fellow Tims. And the urban culture, I'm hearing that the board had a meeting about the display on Sunday. No mention of the SFA. There's a surprise. The display, were you at the game, Patrick? Sorry, were you at Almondvale or the Tony Macaroni at the weekend? Did you get a ticket for that? Right.
I was not.
So the urban culture is talking, of course, about the display that was very quickly moved out of the camera shot, I noticed before the game, the Easter display, which I thought was excellent as well. But again, there seems to be this disconnect, Patrick, between what the board thinks is important and what us as a fan base feel is important. They're coming to blows with the Green Brigade over the Great Wall for the women's games. It's all being done in public rather than in private. And I've also heard what Urban Culture was saying there. I'm not sure the validity of that. But surely there are other things that need to be discussed when it comes to Celtic.
Yeah, you would think so. I mean, the display at the weekend, it wasn't. I mean, I'm sure there'll be some people who weren't big fans of it from the other side of the city, but there wasn't anything too outrageous about it. I thought it was just a celebration of, Irish history. Obviously, big tricolour in the three stands, and then the display, before the game. Then there was one at the beginning of the second half, about fighting for the title. I thought it was a wonderful show of colour, and the organisation, at an away game, because obviously they wouldn't have been allowed in the ground until maybe 2 hours before kickoff. So the organisation is fantastic, and I know it's part of the new standing section rules that you're not allowed tifos and displays, which I think is pretty poor from the club, if I'm being honest, because even themselves will sell, big panoramic photos of displays that the Green Brigade have put on, and charge 40 quid by just framing it, and that the club are happy to profit from these things, but then when it goes over a line of some kind, they're happy to take it away again. So it was very impressive. There's obviously questions about flares and smoke bombs, and I don't know, asthmatic supporters and people in wheelchairs and stuff. There needs to be considerations and stuff, obviously, for that. But when it comes to tifos and banners and stuff, I've got no problem with that, and I thought it looked really good. Obviously at the weekend we won't have any fans in the ground. It will be all Rangers fans, but next season that changes, and hopefully we can continue to bring colour and continue to put on these displays, because I think they do bring a lot, especially at European games. I think Martindale said this morning he's quite happy to have the away fans, because it brings such a big part of their turnover into Livingston. Obviously they'll probably be missing that next season by going down, but it's quite refreshing, because all the other clubs seem quite keen to cut away allocations and turn away paying customers, which doesn't make much sense to me. But it shows that when you can get a packed stadium, when you can have that sort of expression of celebration and of colour, how good it can look on the TV.
What a spectacle! Now you've touched on a couple of points here that I want to raise and tie them in to what I was saying earlier about the SFA's contempt. Another couple of examples. I remember Alan McRae when Celtic were winning trebles for fun. Alan McRae, who was then the president of the SFA, you'll remember he was part of the draw when Rod Stewart was 3 sheets to the wind, steaming drunk, pulling balls out the heart. Remember that? Alan McRae was standing there looking a little bit uncomfortable. He was the president of the SFA, and he said, was it a hat? I think it was one of it was like a fish tank, to be fair. And he said at that time that if Celtic continued to win trebles, it would be boring, and that Scottish football needed a strong Rangers. Now imagine from the very top, Kevin, if you were feeding a culture within the association, because you're the president, right? And you're saying to the association, and it's filtering down, we need a strong Rangers. Now, that's part of the issue we've got with the culture, and that's something that happened. And we were talking about figureheads at Celtic, and I mentioned Robert Kelly. Robert Kelly, at the time, you'll remember that we played Saint Etienne, and we wore a brilliant white away strip, just with green flashes on the collar and on the cuffs. And we very rarely wore this jersey. And it was a beautiful jersey. There's some great pictures of your old fella wearing it, John. The white away jersey, and it was made specifically for that game against Saint Etienne by Umbro, because there was a clash of colours with all the kits that we had available. But the reason that we played Saint Etienne is because Bob Kelly refused to play Eastern European sides in the European Cup 1968-69 due to the Soviet invasion of Prague. And the reason I'm bringing that up is because we could have been, chucked out of European football. And this was 2 years after we won the European Cup. That takes a man of real vigour and chutzpah And he needed some balls, didn't he? Testicular fortitude, I think John calls it, to do that. And this is the part. I know that wasn't against SFA. What I'm talking here is about having a figurehead. Bobby Tate, like Grade 1 referee, 1998 Rangers going for 10 in a row, and he's picking the games that he referees, Kev McCluskey. It's absolutely ridiculous. And they think we're paranoid. You know, these people from the outside looking in say, you now lack credibility because you want to discuss this, Kev. How do we combat that in a balanced way, do you think?
Oh, Jesus, that's a great question, Paul. Thanks for giving it to me.
It just shows that this isn't scripted. This is not scripted. You don't have a clue what's getting thrown at you, right?
No, this was sounded like a question for Patrick, because I think he would have a better answer for this one.
Patrick gave me the idea.
On.
He gave me the idea because what you've got there is a spectacle that the Celtic fans are putting on, and you've got that brilliant image of Kyogo with the flares behind him, and I've seen some brilliant images of Joe Hart with the flares behind him. And instead of supporting the fan base and doing it, it seems as though the club are just going to jump on this bandwagon and be against the fan base. I would much rather the club embraced the fans and said, you know what, there might be a slight issue with pyro. Let's do it safely. Let's get safe pyro and let's talk about it and communicate and engage rather than constantly chuck our own fans under the bus, because we've got enough to contend with, Kev, with the SFA and the mentality and the culture that they have.
Well, when it comes to things like that, certainly the club needs to respect the fans a lot more. I think this is something that we've spoken about during some of the post-match shows. I don't think there's respect with the club and the fans. We are a cash cow to them. We will just willingly give them money every year. And like Patrick said, you know, the fans will go and make these great tifo displays, which the club now wants banned, but will happily take the panoramic pictures of and sell for profit. They will exploit us as much, or they have exploited us basically as much as they can. There comes a point where that needs to stop. It should have come a while ago. And yeah, they need to be able to stand up for us as a support, and they need to stand up for us as a club when it comes to these things at the SFA. To have that case of Bobby Tate picking his last ever game to referee at Ibrox in a game that he hoped, I think, would win them the 10 in a row. You know, he wanted to go out with that crowning glory. To have Alan McRae saying we need a strong Rangers, that he could have said a strong opposition. That would have worked.
Strong
because
challenger,
Scottish football needs a strong opposition, a challenger. It could be Aberdeen, Dundee United, Hibs or Hearts. But it's ingrained within that organisation. And Celtic do need to take a stand. Patrick touched on it before about maybe the 12 clubs getting together to form some sort of breakaway as how would we call it, the instigator to change in Scottish football when it comes to refereeing standards. I don't think that'll ever happen, because there is one team that does benefit from a pattern of assistance that they wouldn't want to see broken. But the other 11 clubs do need to stand up and make some sort of a stance. We need to push to have outside bodies come in and review refereeing standards. You know, we see it when Rangers, to name them, you know, when they go and play in Europe, they don't get the decisions that they get domestically. Why is that?
Yeah,
I think that pattern of assistance that's here.
I think that's how we have that discussion. The discussion, if you want to have it in a balanced way, needs to be about persistence with the pattern of assistance. We need to keep the stats at the forefront of this to say, look, you cannot deny this. You cannot say we're paranoid when all of these data points are all outliers. It just, you can't do it. And if anyone hasn't watched that episode with you and Alan, I strongly suggest they do, because it is, both times fascinating and horrifying. But the data is there, and you can't contest it in a reasonable way. So we just need to persist with, look, here's the stats. Stop telling us that this thing that is provable is not something that is provable. It is provable. It's not paranoia. Nothing's paranoia if you're right. Just because you're worried that they're all out to get you doesn't mean that they're not all out to get you. So from that point of view, that's the way we have a reasonable discussion about it. With I think the Green Brigade really are a busted flush in terms of in terms of relationships with the club. I think that's clearly over. And anything that the Green Brigade will do now will probably be in contravention of whatever the club have told them to do. If they can't have tifos, I mean, the flares are a different matter. Probably shouldn't be doing that anyway, but they can't have tifos. They can't express an opinion in anything that's not Celtic related. All that sort of stuff. So I don't think that doesn't seem to have any future going forward. So I don't know if the Green Brigade will have to reconstitute as a different fans group, but clearly I think the relationship between them and the club has completely broken down.
It's such a shame. It really is such a shame when you think about that, John. But, even just in the last week, it seems as though that communication channel is non-existent between the two groups, between the club and between the Green Brigade. Guys, you will not be back on before the weekend. And I know some of you hate me asking you the question, but I'm going to be asking for predictions. How's it going to go this weekend? Patrick McGilp, will start with your good self.
2-1, I think. 2-1. Take the lead, equaliser, and then get a win on the second half.
Like it. I could handle that. The blood pressure, like John, I'm advancing in years. The blood pressure can handle that, right? Kevin McCluskey.
Yeah, I think I'm going to have to echo Patrick. I think it'll be a close game, decided by 1 goal. 2-1 sounds like a good scoreline with Kyogo to get the winner.
Oh, nice. I love this positivity. John Hughes.
I hate to be boring, but yeah, no, 2-1 was my choice as well before this started. And exactly as Patrick said it as well, I think we'll go ahead. I think they'll equalise and then we'll win, possibly late on and possibly with contributions from our subs.
I think if we're going to score 2 goals, we're going to have the ball in the net 3 times. That's my prediction, right? Going back to the referees, and we'll see what happens in respect of that. Imagine it went without incident. Can't see it. If we are winning about 25 minutes before the end of the game, I wonder what the atmosphere is going to be like at Ibrox. It'll be the last time that they can shut us out before the ticket allocation is increased next season. It's been great fun today. I've really enjoyed it. Brilliant crack with the guys on a Wednesday afternoon. Well over 1,500 tuning in live. We're with Paddy McCourt tomorrow night. He's really looking forward to coming back to Glasgow. I was talking to him yesterday. Everything kicks off about 7 o'clock. There's a German documentary team going to be in to try and capture the atmosphere in the week leading up to the big game. And there's 14 tickets available. 14 tickets. That's it. If you want to come along, the ticket link is underneath this video. All that's left for me to say thank you once again to Patrick McGilp, John Hughes and Kevin McCluskey for joining me on A Celtic State of Mind.
Yeah.